We ask just now, Lord, that you bless us in our coming, that your spirit will abide, that it will lead, guide, and direct us to all truth. And then, oh Lord, we lift up to you the bereaved in our community. We've learned of another who's gone home today. We just ask that you'll be with that family and bring them comfort during this season, and let them know that we serve a God who always gives more than you take away. We ask just now that you'll be with us, keep us, oh Lord, in your perfect peace, and we'll continue to look to the hills which cometh our help, for our help comes from the Lord that made the heavens and earth. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Reverend Summer. And please excuse my voice. I'm sure most of you have read or heard about the Lincoln Parish School Board recently rolling out a plan to consolidate schools and to close 2 of our schools. And this is a concern that we have had, and that was one of the reasons the coalition was established and the reason we are here today. So Reverend Lucas, who I'm biased, he's my pastor from the amazing Mays Chapel, will just give us an overview of why we're here.
Good evening. My name is Terrence Lucas. I'm the pastor of Mays Chapel Church in Ruston. And myself, along with Dr. Liz White, have been serving as co-chairs of this committee. I'm co-chair by default. I was the only Methodist in the room when they got ready to decide. And so I'm here before you today. First of all, we want to thank you all for coming out and being in attendance with us today, because I believe the Ruston plan to consolidate our schools is an issue that is of concern to many of us who are here today. And before we go any further, I want to thank Reverend Julius Sumner, the pastor of this church and the New Rocky Baptist Church family, for allowing us to meet here in their church on this evening. Okay, first thing, why we're here this evening. We are here because we're concerned about the spiritual, emotional, and educational welfare of our children. We're here because as a community of stakeholders, we want and desire the best for our children. Who called this meeting on this evening? The group that we've organized called the Coalition Against School Closures. We have called this meeting to help you to be informed about the changes that are being proposed by the Lincoln Parish School Board concerning the future of our children and the future of our schools. This meeting is for us to dialogue, express our concerns, possibly formulate a plan of action, and to present those concerns at the next meeting of the Lincoln Parish School Board. What is the topic of our discussion this evening? Well, the topic of our discussion tonight is the Lincoln Parish School Consolidation Plan, and it was approved by a vote of 7-4 by the Lincoln Parish School Board. They passed a $65 million capital improvement plan to renovate 2 schools, one two schools, both of them north of Interstate 20, and close 2 schools south of Interstate 20. And a note here, this vote action of the school board took place with no input from the community or the stakeholders who are most affected by this decision, which is another reason why we're here today. When the vote took place, none of us were there to either voice our opinion, either for or against what the school board was trying to do. And so we're here today to get your input, to see where your thoughts are, to see where your hearts are, to see where you stand concerning the proposed consolidation plan of the Lincoln Parish School Board. And these are the details of the consolidation plan. 1, the plan calls for the consolidation of 4 elementary schools in Ruston into 2 expanded K-5 schools. 2, the plan calls for the expansion of 2 schools, Hillcrest Elementary and Glenview Elementary Schools. 3, the plan calls for 2 schools to be closed. That's Cypress Springs Elementary and that's Ruston Elementary Schools. As a note, Students from Cypress Springs and Ruston Elementary will be sent to the new two expanded schools. And principals from the two closed schools will become either the principal or the assistant principal at the new school. Next, the plan calls for Cypress Springs campus to become the new central office for the Lincoln Parish School Board. And next, the plan calls for Ruston Elementary campus to become the location for the school district's new alternative school, which would be at the old Ruston Elementary School in one of our communities of color. How would this proposal be financed? Well, a special election has been scheduled for April the 29th to renew a 17.75 mil property tax to fund this proposal. If passed, this tax renewal will last for another 20 years. Our response to this plan so far by the committee has been no. This would not be in the best interest for our children, our community, nor were we considered in the process. And we're here this evening to find out what you think and where you stand about the school board's proposal. With that being said, we're going to begin our panel discussion with our panelists who are seated here before you. And we're going to ask Ms. Vita Emmons if she would come and facilitate the panel discussion.
Thank you. We will be providing cards that if anyone has a question, we're asking you to write it on the card. You can raise your hand if you want a card. We have a card and we have some pens. And these questions will be addressed after our panel completes talking. So if anybody is interested, my granddaughter is up here front. So turn around so you can see Renaya if anybody raised their hands together. And we have some up here. And once completed, it can be passed back up. Through this town hall meeting, you will get an opportunity to hear from a panel consisting of members from the coalition and see what the issues are that will be brought up tonight and what position the coalition is taking on these issues that concerns all of us. Hopefully, you will join the movement to keep our schools open. At this time, I will introduce the panelists. We have 5 panelists that are here right now. Another one may be coming. Ms. Precious Wilkerson Parr had another engagement and will not be able to be with us tonight. Mr. David Ferguson is here. He's a retired principal and coach at middle school grades and high school. Mr. Bill Smith is not here yet. Ms. Jackie Sumler, retired classroom teacher and former regional representative of the Louisiana Association of Educators. Dr. Danielle Williams, and she rushed back to us from Baton Rouge. We weren't thinking she would make it, so hopefully she didn't get a ticket coming back. She's an assistant professor in the College of Education at Grambling State University, and also an online professor for an Institute of Higher Education in Texas. She is also the newly elected District 1 member of the Lincoln Parish School Board. She's my school board member, and I'm proud to have her there. Dr. Janet Godey, retired higher education administrator, dean, and department head. If Mr. Smith comes in, most of you know him, but I think he will be here, so I'm going to go on and tell you about him. Bill Smith is a retired director of the City of Ruston Parks and Recreation and the former legislative assistant to Senator Charlie Barr. Without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our panelists, and they have been instructed to speak 8 to 10 minutes. 6 to 8 minutes. Okay. Well, good, since they're looking at me like that, I don't have to worry about keeping time. They'll be ready to stop. So we will get started, and since Ms. Carr is not here, we will start. Next person in line is Mr. Ferguson.
First thing, many of you know me, and I ain't never been short of words. 6 minutes get me just warmed up. But what I see, the problem with consolidating these schools is going to be discipline, school environment, and truancy. You put a lot of kids at 700, 800, they just a number. You know, when you had small schools, when I was principal, I knew all 400 of mine, even them little ones. I get me 350 high fives from 4-year-olds. So that's going to run amok. The school environment is the most important part of a successful school. And I don't see it being there when they put all these kids in one spot. You know, I used to love to come to school. And we need to make sure these kids love to come to school. You know, just because you're principal, you need to meet and greet everything on your campus. Once you put 800 kids in one spot, you're going to have truancy problems. Because if that environment is not conducive to learning, nobody there is going to be prosperous. Like right now, the subgroups in Lincoln Parish are scoring poorly. And that's been my concern, is when they decided to do this, they didn't involve us in it. And I couldn't understand why we wasn't there, so we could have input in it. Because like I say, discipline is going to increase, truancy is going to increase. I got another one here, but you know I turned 70 about 3 weeks ago. Remember is one thing, but these are what I'm looking at. When you put, you know, he said the classrooms wouldn't enlarge, but we're going to have to wait and see that. But at the schools they are presently at, it's not. There's a small environment in that classroom, and that teacher is able to communicate with all of them. But you go in there and put all, you know, because I asked him, what's the configuration of each class and how many kids at each school? He said 700, 800. But he wouldn't tell me about a classroom. And see, he still has to obey by the federal government and make them even. But the only other problem I got is all the schools moving to the north. Our kids are coming from the south. They're going to get up early and come to school. Yeah. That's one of the statements they made, was that kids getting up too early to come to school. Now, why are our kids getting up early to come to school? You know, it's just not there. They're not getting up early to go to Cypress Springs and Ruston Elementary. But there's fairness, should be, in everything that's done. I've asked them more than once, where is the study that you conducted to make this decision? Show me some statistics. Show me where you studied a school district. And the only one I know about is the school district in Dallas. They did this, and the whole school sunk. Scores went further down. And my belief is, if you want scores up, then you do what's necessary to bring them up. You know, when I was at I.A. Lewis, why would I send you to PE when you couldn't do no simple math? You went to math. If you couldn't read, you went to reading or English. Whatever it took, I put you there to help you. But you get 700, 800 kids in one spot. They just there. There'll be a lot of retention, kids failing. So this is one reason why I'm not for one lick. Plus, we don't need no tax no more. We in a recession. And a lot of these folks, you don't want to put out all that money. Now, what's gonna happen when you put out all that money and it fails? You'll never get another tax passed nowhere. So, you know, my thing is, we need to put everything first toward our children. We need to start kindergarten, but I found out in a study that if you put too much knowledge on them at one time, they'll shut down on you by the 5th grade. So we don't need to get excited and fill them full of a bunch of store-bought material you buy from some company that's supposed to work. So we need to do this one thing: teach them. Because it's true that you have a weak teacher, your kid's gonna be weak. You have no discipline in that classroom, they're not gonna function. Can you see now? That's part of 70. Then you can have poor administrative leadership. One of the things I was concerned with is I asked him about what he's going to do with all these principals from these schools. And he said he's going to put them in these K-5 schools. Why? The school was a C. It was failing. It wasn't good. You know? So making the right choice and putting the right people in the right place, you'll be successful. But like I said, discipline, truancy. When they don't feel comfortable, they ain't coming to school. They ask the question, why we see so many kids walking the street? Stop and ask them. They'll tell you, I don't feel comfortable at school. You know, we have discipline coordinators. When they talk down to a kid, that starts it right there. You know, you can catch more flies with honey than you can vinegar.
Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. We may have
I told you I wasn't short-winded yet.
all right, Ms. Summer.
I'm going to stand up a little bit short, so I don't know how my voice is going to carry to you. I think my topic was community environment and concerns. I am a former educator, and I also represented educators throughout the state of Louisiana, as well as in 2 other states. And my issue, not issue, but what I'm to share with you is the community's concern. I have talked with parents, and I asked them, what is your concern? Number 1 is time. Right now, when I'm in Ruston visiting with my daughter, there's a school, 2 school buses that come. She lives in a corner house. And these school buses, one of them is there at 6 o'clock in the morning picking up children. And there are children already on the bus.
Yep.
There's another one that comes through at 6:15. And there are children already on the bus. And I asked parents, and yes, I've talked with parents. I wanted to know from them what their concern is. Number 1 was time. The time that my child has to get up, the time that my child gets home, if they're on that bus at 6 o'clock and 6:15, you know what time they're getting home. It's after 4. So their concern now, my child doesn't have any time to play or relax. They have to get busy doing their homework, and then they go to bed. There's no time for family interaction, very, very little. And that was their biggest concern, was time. And if the schools move, that means that those children who are on the west side of Ruston, the south side of Ruston, are going to have to get up even earlier. Their other concern was discipline. They're wondering how their children are going to react in such a large environment. I was hoping that the superintendent was going to be here. I asked him on Sunday night if he was going to attend this meeting. His response to me was, yes, I'll be there. And I wanted him to be here because I knew there was going to be a large group. He spoke to the coalition. And some of the things that he had to say were good things. But they never did address how it was that they were going to see about those children getting to school in a timely manner, other than having to get up even earlier, which is one of the biggest concerns, as I said, that the parents that I've talked with that they have. And the other one is the discipline, how they're going to adjust into this new and larger environment. If there are some parents here who have similar concerns when it comes to time for the questions and answers, please voice us. And we didn't get from the superintendent, I don't think we did, any statement in regard to time as to how they were going, how they were going to adjust that. So that's one of the biggest concerns that I have gotten from the parents. Thank you. Oh, the other concern was. The other concern was that I've talked with people over in the Cypress Springs area. You know that there is a coalition in Cypress Springs that is also addressing this issue. And I had talked to see if anybody was here tonight from that coalition. But one of the concerns is property values. What's going to happen now? Oh, I see one raising a hand right there. What's going to happen now? You know that the schools are moving out of the neighborhoods. Because when people search for homes, they're also looking for where those schools are and how good those schools are. And so that is another concern. That issue has been brought to me as I have talked with residents and with parents about their property value. Thank you. Now I think I got it all.
Thank you. And please allow me to apologize to Dr. Liz White. I'm not on my game tonight.
Nope.
Dr. White is a retired professor of English. She's at Louisiana Tech. President of Lincoln Parish Retired Educators. And she currently serves as co-chair of this coalition against school closures. So please accept my apology. I left her off when I was introducing the panel. Since Mr. Smith is here, I've already introduced him, and I'm gonna give him an opportunity, and anybody that knows Bill Smith knows that I got to set the timer for him.
That's right. and she'll probably have to use it. But this is a good-looking crowd. Wouldn't you think? Yes. You did a good job getting everybody here. Let's get your hand up, your arm. Let's wave it around a little bit. Come on now, get involved. Let's put your hand on your chin now. See? That's what I figured. That's exactly what I figured. I figured you come in here to watch folks. See, because you certainly weren't listening. I saw too many of you go here. That's a cheat. That's not, there's the cheat. But they've asked me to talk about a subject that not many people like to talk about, and that's race. And evidently we've got some good teachers, because as I sat there the other night and watched the vote, it was right down racial line. Wonder why. Now, both sides can't be right. I expected somebody to say, hold up, we have a problem from Jump Street. We got 4 blacks over here voting against this proposal, and we've got 6 whites over here voting for it. 7. Now, 7, if you're gonna teach my child, how you gonna teach them like this? See, you got this over here and you got this over there. Now, I wish somebody could please or would please tell me what their problem is. Don't all of you speak at one time. See, but when I was growing up, coming through school, I was taught that you respected elders and you respected leadership. And who do I choose to go with when they're voting this way? Now come on, somebody tell me, I gotta go one side or the other. Who do I go with?
The right side.
Oh, the right side. I heard somebody say the other day, there's 2 sides to every story. There's your side, there's my side, and there's the right side. So when I learned to count, that made 3. You know, so something is wrong somewhere. And it just appears to me that it's at the top.
It is.
You know, as long as we were under the desegregation suit, it appeared that things rolled along pretty well. But one of the first things I noticed missing was the biracial committee. That was a group of black and whites sitting down at a table talking about the school system and how it was working for both communities. And what could we do to make things better? And they don't talk about that anymore. I've always believed the weaker the argument is, the quicker you go to race. You see, when you get in a discussion with me and we don't agree, first thing you say that because you're black. Well, I've been black a long time. And I'm going to continue to say what I believe to be right. And I'm certainly going to speak out against things that I consider to be wrong. You know, a lot of people didn't like John Hayes when he was here on this side and writing that morning paper. But I think in hindsight, I bet that most of the stuff he wrote was the truth. We didn't like it because he would call you out in a minute. He didn't care what color. He didn't care what status. He didn't care about anything. He was going to write about it and had pretty good legs to stand on because he kept on writing. And with the proposal that's put out there, I guess the biggest problem I had with it, one of the biggest problems I had with it was they sat there in less than 5 minutes and spent $65 million. And I think the reason was because it was mine and yours. But I think if it had been theirs, they would have taken longer than 5 minutes to spend that $65 million. You know, and for a whole community to be left out. You know, I think if they wanted to do anything halfway right, they would have come to the community. They would have sent some flyers home. They would have done something to involve all of us. What do you think? See, one head's never had all of the answers, and they be correct. But you get 2 or 3 together, you'd be surprised what you come out with. You know? On my way up here, I heard on the radio that Forrest Gump had died. I stopped the car and pulled over, but they went a bit further, said he got to heaven. St. Peter came to the gate and told him, look, Forrest, you got to have a test before you can come in. He said, a test? He said, yeah, we got to test you before you can get in. I'm going to give you the questions and you can go back and you can check it. He said, the first thing I want to know is how many eggs are in a dozen. He said, okay, I got you. He said, I want to know Jesus' last name. So 2-3 days later, Forrest got back. He said, hey, Pete, that first one was easy. There's 12 eggs in a dozen. He said, oh, yeah, you got that. He said, but that second one, I had some problems with it. I talked to everybody from the preacher down and from the back door to the top. And I couldn't find anybody to tell me Jesus' last name. He said, but I saw this old fella with a cane. And I just happened to stop him and ask him, man, do you know Jesus' last name? He said, oh, yeah. He said, what is it? He said, Andy? He said, Andy, how you come up with Andy? And he walks with me and he tells me I'm his own. You know, and see, that's the kind of thing. See, that's what I'm talking about. It's those little things we be missing out on. And I'm sure that we could have caught some of these little things had the superintendent or the board or my board member had come out and say, look, we are going to propose this tax and this is what we're going to do with it. I would feel pretty good about that because I had a say in what was going to be done.
Yeah.
But when you are shut completely out, when I'm shut completely out, I don't sleep good at night. And sometimes I get into some of those languages they don't use in Sunday school to clear my head and to fix it to where I can get some sleep at night.
30 seconds.
But with this one, and I'm headed to my seat, but with this one I've not been able to figure it out yet. Let me see the hands of everybody that invited somebody in the last week of another race to have a meal with them. See, I see 2 or 3 hands out of this whole crowd. That goes to show you we're not talking. We are not talking, because if you get down to a meal, every now and then you're going to look up and say, oh, this is good. See, and it could have been the same way with this tax. It could have been your head is down, but every now and then you look up and say, this is good.
I think Dr. Godden and Dr. Williams are working together, so it's your turn.
Can we start off? Okay. So, first of all, I want to say I'm honored to serve this community. This community raised me, and I'm a product of this community. And so that's why I'm very passionate about educating students. I received a great education here. When I left, I was well prepared. When I left and moved to Texas, I was ahead of my colleagues. There were 2 things that I ran on my campaign. It was test scores and transparency. Those were the 2 things. And so currently we know education, there's a lot of things going on in education right now. But when it's all said and done, we're here because of student achievement. That's the #1 goal. We are here to make sure that every child is successful. And so we want to ensure that every child has a high quality education, no matter their social and economic status, their race, their gender. That's the #1 goal. So I wanted to explain the reason why I voted no, along with 3 of my other colleagues. And that was because there's no plan.
That's right.
There's no plan. And so when you talk about a plan related to student achievement, there's no plan. After we voted no at that board meeting, Mr. Ferguson and I met with the superintendent, just to try to get some clarity. Because at the end of the day, when you think about whoever is in that seat as a board, you want to make sure that they're successful, no matter what. Because if you fight with the superintendent, at the end of the day, the students are not, they're going to suffer through the whole process. And so I told the school leaders that we need a plan. Because I have to be able to go back every time I vote and go back to the constituents in the district and explain to them what exactly going on. Like, why did I vote a certain way? And so another thing that I explained to the superintendent is that we need a short-range plan. We have a STEM building right now we're not even utilizing, okay? We need a short-range plan, we need a long-range plan. And I don't know if you all know, but as a board member, we only allowed to serve 3 consecutive terms. And so I explained to him, I said, I'm doing a disservice to these students if the future, because I have to prep that next person who's gonna sit in my seat, okay? And so I explained to him, I said, whoever comes after me, they have to be able to understand what the plan was in the future, like the past plan, the current plan, and where we're headed. There's no plan, okay? And so I put a lot of time in studying reports at the State Department. I'm here to sound the alarm in this community. We have a problem. You know, we talk about the school system is good and this and that, but where are the blue ribbon campuses? Do y'all see any blue ribbon campuses? Okay. As you know, and I want you all to just research that. When you see blue ribbon campuses, that means that the African Americans are doing well, students with disability doing well, Caucasian students are doing well, Hispanic students. That lets you know that's the highest level of achievement with the federal government. And we do not have one blue ribbon campus in Lincoln Parish. Okay? So when you say it's good, that's opinion. You're just giving your opinion right now. Okay? We also talk about, we have high graduation rates, and I've discussed this with the leaders. We're graduating students, but what are we graduating them to do? They're going to sit on their parents' couches, and what are they doing? We're not preparing students.
Nope.
Okay? And I also, Mr. Ferguson and I, when we met with the superintendent, I explained to him that as an educator in the school system, it is our ultimate responsibility to prepare every student to matriculate through college. Now, will every student go to college? No. But as a school system, that's not our choice. That's not our choice to decide whether a student goes to college or not. That's that parent and that student to decide. Okay? Also, let me go there because I have all my notes. I want to address, because several of our panelists mentioned this, but this warms my heart to see you all here. It really does. Because since day one, you all have wrapped your arms, many of you have wrapped your arms around me, and I know your heart and I know where you're coming from. You won't change. You want to see this community do better. I want to see this community do better, and I'm going to fight. So one of the things I do want to ask you to do, other than voting no for the tax, I want you to start, if you get a chance to, please start coming to school board member meetings. Okay? The first Tuesday. And if you're not able to come, send someone. But it's the first Tuesday of the month, because we need to show this crowd, we need to show that at the school board meeting, to let them know we have a voice. And we expect our students to be successful. I also want to give you all my cell numbers. Some of you all are in my district and some of you all are not, but feel free to call me. And that is 318-614-5663. Okay, Dr. Godey.
And I like to compare myself to Danielle because she was born and raised here. I'm an immigrant, literally and figuratively. I came here 18 years ago. But for the 16 of those years, I've had 4 great-grandchildren coming through the Lincoln Parish school system. So I have been from pre-K up through high school. And one of the challenges that I see is one that probably you all see. And I don't know why everybody doesn't get it. But every parent, every guardian, everyone who has a child breathing air wants the very best possible education for their child. And for anyone to assume the responsibility or assume that everybody would not want that for their child is problematic. So let's start with the assumption that everybody wants the absolute best, no matter what walk of life, no matter what race, what gender, whatever. That's the bottom line. So the ultimate North Star for this whole process is the success of our students. Not only the academic success. I'm hearing Ferguson over here talk about what happens when the schools get too big. I've been there and done that. I've taught K-12 all the way to doctoral level in my 50-plus years of education. And the reality of it is that we need to ensure that not only is there a plan, but the plan is workable, visible, transparent, and everybody knows what it is. And right now, our plan seems to be brick and mortar, which is the tail wagging the dog.
Yes, ma'am.
One of the things I tell my organizational theory students when you're talking about your budgeting class is your plan drives your budget. Your budget does not drive your plan. And right now, what I'm seeing is money driving a plan, but the plan's not really clear. So let's assume that we do all of this consolidation. The majority of us here are concerned about losing schools in our communities because it's a death knell. Schools are not only educational institutions, they're social structures. And when a school leaves a community, it takes the heart out of the community, and that's a problem. But at the same time, the receiving communities in which the schools will double, they are not going to be happy either. Because they're communities that have been built over time. The streets are small, the geographic configurations of the neighborhoods will not support huge amounts of traffic and buses and in and out. Believe me, I have done car line at Hillcrest for the last 16 years, and I can tell you, it's a zoo. And I did summer school car line one year at Glenview. It's a zoo. How do you double that? Okay, that's a problem. One of the things we also deal with when we talk about academic outcomes is we cannot separate academic outcomes from social, psychological, and emotional outcomes. Dr. Ferguson, and Mr. He said something that I keep going back to, and that is that we're very focused on the academic outcome, and that is what we want. But we need that to be balanced with the fact that a child goes into a school and that is their social, emotional, psychological community. It's their home. Remember when I'm old enough to remember going to school back in the days when the dinosaurs roamed and the earth had been But school was our other home. It was our social community. We had our family and church home and all that, but the school was the place where our social lives thrived. It was where we emotionally grew up. It was where our buddy systems formed. And for some of I was from a town where we were in the same school from first grade to sixth grade, and then we went to a junior high, and then we went to a high school. And it's a relatively small town, and we all still know each other, and a lot of years away, and about 1,500 miles away from where I grew up. But the reality of it is, we run the risk of not only impacting our children's academic success, we run a very, very strong risk of harming their psychosocial development as they move through. We cannot separate the academics or the cognitive from the affective. We need both of them to be effectively supported for our children to be totally successful. We can't separate them. And pushing the configurations is a problem. I said something back, and Mr. Ford can attest to this because we went through some times together. Being in a room with the DOJ attorneys and the comments about what was required for DSEG and unitary status. And one of the things I said to him was, I understand the law. Believe me, I'm old enough to remember when it was passed, okay? But the problem with the law is that it separates out the social and emotional realities of communities, okay? The reality of a community cannot be just pushed away because the law says A, B, C. And yeah, we want unitary status, but at the risk of what? Because if you have naturally evolving communities that evolve naturally de facto, and people make personal choices about where they choose to live. That should not penalize the education of their children. Okay? Because if you are the district, no matter where that child lives in that district, and no matter who their mama and daddy are, no matter what their house looks like, whatever, they got the access to the same resources. All right? So I think my time is up. I can preach long on this, but I'll let somebody else have a turn.
Before Dr. White speaks, if any of you have questions that you've written, you can raise your hand or pass them up front. Kanaya, wake up so you can pick them up.
She got up early this morning.
Children are not what they used to be.
Early this morning. Prime example.
You know we won't talk to dumpster about that. They will talk on the law. Gotta get right.
Beginning to leave. We need to move on. People are beginning to leave.
Okay, we don't have much longer, so bear with us, and let's give Dr. White your attention, and then we'll have a few questions, and we'll be out. We haven't been here an hour yet, so it's not much longer.
Thank you. Let me say good evening to all of you. My name is Liz White, and I am a retired professor and president of the Lincoln Parish Retired Educators, currently serving as co-chair of the Coalition Against School Closures. My topic for tonight is about the renewal of a 17.75 meal property tax that will come before the voters on April 29th. Now, no one wants to pay more taxes, period. We're voting on a tax in Ruston this Saturday, March 25th. It's a sales tax. If it passes, everyone who buys those goods will pay that tax. Then next month, April 29th to be exact, there's another tax on the ballot. It's the renewal of a 17.75 meal property tax for the Ruston School District. If it passes, all property owners will be strapped with that tax for the next 20 years. Now that's a long time. Suppose within that period, the police jury decides it needs additional tax monies for a parish-wide project. Or suppose within that period, the city of Ruston will ask for additional tax monies for a needed project. Imagine how much additional taxes we'll be paying within the next 20 years. The Lincoln Parish School Board expects this property tax will generate $65 million needed to pay for the closing of 2 elementary schools, in addition to expanding two elementary schools, two other elementary schools.
There's something going on here, Vinny.
Now, as you already know, the Lincoln Parish School Board voted February 7 to move forward with a plan that would see the district's current schools for grades 3 through 5, that is Cypress Springs Elementary and Ruston Elementary, closed. Then force students and faculty to transfer to newly expanded Glenview and Hillcrest Elementary, which are currently K through 2. The irony about this plan looks really crazy to me. It pictures the two elementary schools north of the interstate in the white affluent neighborhood as big, bright, shiny stars at the expense of closing the schools south of the interstate in the black neighborhoods. In other words, it tells black taxpayers to pay on a tax bill for 20 years to have schools closed in their neighborhood. My mother would say something like, "You cutting off your noses to spite your face." What are other drawbacks to this property tax? If you're black, Bill gone. If you're black, you run the risk that has been a practice for decades. The risk of inflated assessments. The risk of white tax assessors intentionally overvaluing the property of black residents. Now, I'm not suggesting at all that we have that in small town Ruston. I know it's the case in large cities. Many tax assessors for decades have routinely saddled black and minority residents with property tax bills that are too high given the value of their homes. Just a reminder.